Hello, America. It is I, Theb Stard, the embodiment of and only hope for America, here with one final episode before the American election to ask you, the American people, to vote for Kamala Harris. And I will be giveling, oh boy, I believe that's a combination of giving and delivering. This election has fried my brain. I will be delivering a stark final warning about what will happen if you do not vote for Kamala Harris. And this message is paid for by the absolute trillions of dollars I have in secret bank accounts across the world. But unofficially, it's just my own personal beliefs. First, a message to any reasonable Republican out there. I just have one final series of questions for you. You heard everything Donald Trump has said so far, and are you still considering voting for him, that all taxes will be shifted into tariffs on other countries and sales tax will be how taxes are collected and there will be no more income tax? Do you truly believe that is the way to go? Do you also believe that it is necessary and possible to deport 25 million people? Are trans people truly interfering with your life? Are gay people getting married making your marriage any lesser than? If you said no to any of that, then your reasoning for voting for Donald Trump must be higher grocery prices and higher gas prices. While I do understand that it's true that grocery prices have gone up, at least that's what my butler staff tells me. Personally, I think they're embezzling from me, but that's a separate issue. But while those grocery prices are going up, the corporations that make those groceries are taking in a lot more money. So reasonably, you could place the blame on the corporations and not Joe Biden for X, Y, and Z, especially because he made it his goal to tax those corporations and stop the shrinkflation, i.e. the lessening of the products that you buy because corporations are trying to squeeze every little dime out of you, the consumer. Again, something that Democrats are actively trying to prevent. Don't believe me? Google what happened to the Consumer Protection Bureau under Donald Trump. And if your next anecdote is gas prices, well, may I remind you that gas prices are going down quite a bit. At least that's what my driver tells me. I never see the gas prices myself as my windows are blacked out so I can smoke blunts. And speaking of blunts, if you do like the new wave of legalization of THC and other types of gummies, well, that will probably go away under Donald Trump because they do want a theocracy. And under that theocracy, not only will your high be mellowed, but your reproductive rights will be more or less gone. And not just your reproductive rights, the reproductive rights of quite literally every citizen in these United States. And no, I do not just mean abortion. There have been dozens of people who have died due to the overturning of Roe v. Wade and some draconian law passed as a result in some red state. And by red, I mean Republican, the people I'm talking to right now. So I ask you, Republicans, to be on the right side of history here. Maybe we move on from the theocratic movement of your party and maybe get back to rationalism. And I do understand that some of you may be still concerned about the border, but may I remind you that there was a border bill on the table, bipartisan in fact, that Donald Trump killed so that he could use it as political capital during the election, a bill that Kamala Harris has promised to pass. And if you are concerned about jobs, well, may I remind you that the majority of the Biden-Harris presidency was marked month over month with growing job numbers. And as a side note to any Republican union member, how are you a Republican? They're actively trying to dismantle unions in every single industry that they can. I believe my producer said that any single Republican who is a union member who considers themselves a Trump supporter is a scab outright. I personally think those are pretty harsh words, but this is a pretty harsh election. And if you do believe that Republicans can be union members, well, tell us why in the comments and why you didn't vote for Donald Trump, a man who, fun fact, bragged about firing union members and praised people who did. So yes, I believe my producer might be right. There is no logical way for a union member to be a Republican. And if you are, kudos on your mental gymnastics. I believe it's the same gymnastics that evangelical Christians use to rationalize their hatred of immigrants, especially considering their Lord and Savior was one himself. All right, let's move on. The Democrats, you need to vote for Kamala Harris, and, well, you already are, so I guess keep on keeping on. Maybe do some phone banking, or rally your friends, or make sure you're registered to vote by Election Day and go vote on Election Day. And if you, a Democrat, did not register to vote on time, then the entire Trump victory is directly your fault. I'm just kidding, but it was a pretty easy thing to get done very, very quickly, and you dropped the ball. All right, now, undecided voters. How are you still undecided? I mean, my God, how? After everything you've seen, how are you still undecided? I mean, unless you didn't see anything that has been going on these past 2 years. And I do understand, there are bigger things in life and politics, and you're just trying to make ends meet, a lot of you. But you will not be able to make ends meet if Donald Trump wins this election. Almost 70% of economists have said that Trump's economic plan would be a disaster. And I must reiterate, he did say that he wanted to get rid of income tax and replace it with tariffs, which is effectively a sales tax on the American people. So if, as an undecided voter, you are only concerned about the economy, well, there you go. Remember that economies have thrived under Democrats, and they generally crash under Republicans. Some may disagree, and those people would be basically incorrect. The economy may look really good for a little bit, but then you have a fun little thing called Black Monday. They even made a fun little comedy about it starring Don Cheadle. Stock market crashes are quite fun. If you're rich and smart like me, you make a killing off any one of them. Ask the people in 2008 during the housing crisis, which happened after, fun fact, George W. Bush, a Republican. And what's the worst thing that happened under Obama? Well, I don't know. Gay marriage, healthcare, and the bailing out of the auto industry, which was, either good or bad depending on who you talk about it too, but, people kept their jobs. And what happened under Trump? Well, a Muslim ban, the degradation of the United States' presence on the world stage, the axing of several environmental regulations, and then a certain 1 million people died from a certain virus because a certain president decided it would be better to discourage masking and vaxxing and instead promote conspiracy theories about a certain pandemic. And now we have 2 flus because Karen and Dave didn't want to wear a mask. So that said, undecided voters, just decide. I mean, the trans people are not ruining your life, and the economy is not that bad. But it will be worse under Donald Trump. And speaking of things that will be worse under Donald Trump, let's talk about all of the policies that the leftists of the world want to push out. Let's come out swinging and circle back to our very first episode of this season, the war between Palestine and Israel. Now, I understand that you all want that to end. Well, fun fact, so does everybody else, including the right wing. How that ends is up to you, the voter. By voting for Kamala Harris, you will be voting for a route of harm reduction to the Palestinian people, as well as every person who is able to give birth in your life. But we'll touch on that part in a second. As for the Palestinian people and the Israelis, well, Kamala Harris has said multiple times that there needs to be a ceasefire, a 2-state solution, and that she will do everything in her power to stop. How quickly that happens, well, we won't know this side of that event. However, Donald Trump also wants an end to that war, except he wants to help Israel accelerate it and wipe out the Palestinian people and turn Gaza into beachfront property. That is not hyperbole, those are things he said. And some of you may be thinking, well, why don't you vote for Jill Stein? Well, first, she has no literal path to the White House, and second, the good people over on I Do Not Trust This Person will be covering her next season, so you know she must have done something bad. And Jill Stein is not for you. She is quite literally never around between elections. If Jill, Cornel West, or the Libertarian candidate actually believed in the prosperity of the people of these United States and the preservation of democracy, they would be doing everything in their power to keep the fascist that is Donald Trump and his collective out of the White House. But they are not. Jill Stein has even gone as far as to say that she would look at pardoning some of the January 6th terrorists, something Donald Trump has also promised he would do within his first weeks of being president. But aside from democracy and all of that silly stuff, let's talk about reproductive rights. You won't have them if Donald Trump is elected. That's it. There will be no more. He has said that he will not sign a national abortion ban, but let's face it, he lies a lot. And okay, let's maybe take him at his word saying that he won't sign the national abortion ban, but do you think he will be president for very long once he gets into office? He is clearly mentally unstable, and there is the 25th Amendment that can easily be passed by any of the people from the Heritage Foundation that Donald Trump has lined his administration, or at least his future administration, with. Meaning, once they're in the White House, they can remove the toxic person who almost loses them every election and, well, let the theocracy begin. And you know what? Let's flip this over. Let's say Kamala Harris wins. I was on the TikTok recently, where you can follow me on my very important TikTok page, @America the Podcast, and someone pointed out this very valid and very correct point. Say Kamala Harris wins without the leftist and progressive vote as they vote for Jill Stein and Cornel West. Or maybe you're one of the ones who are staying home and not voting because the entire system is corrupt. Well, may I remind you that the system will continue to be corrupt unless you help try and change it. Remember that people lose by thousands or even hundreds of votes all of the time. But say she wins without any of your votes, and your entire intention was to push Democrats the other way by voting for more progressive candidates. Well, while that does work in the primary, it does not work in general elections, usually. And if you think that it does, well, Al Gore would like a word with you. But again, say she does win without your protest vote or without your non-vote because you wanted her and the rest of the Democratic Party to move towards the left, well, now they are no longer inclined to move more towards progressive policies because those progressive policies did not win them the election. The centrist Republicans did. And the election at that point would have logically been saved by a bunch of women and other people who wanted to preserve reproductive rights. And then, from a Democratic Party strategy standpoint, your vote is no longer really needed. You have proven yourselves to be unreliable, and that from a harm reduction standpoint, you did not care enough to actually get out and vote for the harm reduction candidate. You quite literally are putting the reproductive rights of your friends and family on the line because you want to stay on your high horse. Well, I hope that high horse is fast enough to get away from whatever secret police Trump forms to get rid of all of the immigrants, gay people, and trans people. And let's not forget the abolition of the Education Department and the Health and Human Services Department being transitioned into the Department of Life, with an emphasis on cracking down on abortion. Now, to anybody who has had an abortion out there who is not wanting to vote for Kamala Harris or vote for a third party, imagine if your abortion records were made available to the government under a brand new government that is being controlled by all men under a theocratic rule. Do you think you're going to be safe? I don't. And if you think I'm just fear-mongering, well, you're correct. That's the point of this episode, to scare each and every one of you into voting for Kamala Harris, because it has come to that point. She is already likely going to win the popular vote, but because of the Electoral College, that may become a difficult task to actually get all the way through to the actual win, which means she needs to garner so many votes that it is undeniable that she won the election. Because the right wing already has officials in place and lawsuits pre-written to make this an even more chaotic election. So, that said, I don't care if I offended you. I don't care if you stop listening to my show because you didn't like what I said here. Democracy is at stake. People are at stake. My friends are at stake. My family is at stake. Your friends, your family, your loved ones, your citizens, your neighbors, everyone, their freedoms, their reproductive rights, even their right to vote, is quite literally at stake. You have heard me several times say the word theocracy in this episode, and I am just now realizing I did not define it. It is a government under religious law, similar to the Taliban, except in this case it will be controlled by the Christian Church. Specifically, members of a hyper-right-wing, quote-unquote, post-liberal sect of the Catholic Church known as Opus Dei. You may have seen a series pop up in this very important podcast feed called I Do Not Trust This Person, Season 3, The Ballad of J.D. Vance the Weird. Well, that series details what Opus Dei is, does, and their influence over one J.D. Vance, the possible future president of these United States. Something that will only happen if Kamala Harris loses this election. An election that, I must reiterate one more time, could be decided by just a few counties in a few random states. So please, register to vote and get out and vote by the end of the day on November 5th. Otherwise, the world as you know it will change very fast and for a very long time. I thank you for listening, and good luck, America. For now, and as always, good night and good fight.
It's America, the
You've been listening to America, the podcast, the original series. The show stars Tim Phillippe and Theb starred the embodiment of and only hope for America as themselves. Any additional voices heard in this episode were portrayed by the fabulous cast of voice actors listed in the show notes. The amazing America, the podcast theme song you are listening to is by Timmy Two Step, and all other music and sounds heard in this show were procured through Story Blocks, Pixabay, freesound.org, and Sonus. America, the podcast is recorded at Shway Media Studios in Austin, Texas, and is mixed and edited by Tim Phillippe. Executive producers for this show are Alana Matos, Tim Phillippe, and Theb starred. For more information, please visit shwaymedia.com and americathepodcast.com. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved.
This has been a production of Shway Media, all rights reserved. For more information, please visit shwaymedia.com.